Hey, what's going on everybody? It's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and today I'm finally talking about the Fosi Audio K7. This has been a product that's been requested for me to cover for a while now. It's been a known entity, but it's been exclusively available on a Kickstarter. So I didn't want to cover a product that was still on Kickstarter because I've heard of horror stories from other brands in general where sometimes Kickstarters don't go through or you get a very different product than what was promised. And I would have felt terrible if I started endorsing or pushing for a product that never came to light or misled customers. So at the time of this review being released, the K7 is now available on retailers such as Amazon. So huge thanks to Fosi Audio for being patient and understanding with that. Now, because the markets are in kind of like total disarray right now when it comes to imports and tariffs and all these other things, I have no idea what this is actually going to sell for in the coming weeks or months or whatever. So at the time of filming this, it's supposed to be under $200. So take that for what you will. You always want to compare current pricing at the time you're purchasing something anyway, because it might change how products stack up. I'm going to review this assuming it's somewhere between $170 and $200 when I compare it to a couple other products later in the video, but I did want to disclose that. Now, on the note of pricing, this is one of the first times I have my own special discount code for purchasing this. I did want to disclose this early because this is not an affiliate thing. I made sure that I get no kickbacks from this. The code is literally to save you 20% off, and I get nothing in return, so I don't want people to ever think I'm incentivized to review or say kind things about a product to help sell it more and make more money for myself. However, if you decide after watching this video at the end that you do want to purchase it, be sure to use that code because 20% is quite significant and that can save you quite a bit. So what is the K7? Well, Fosi Audio made this to kind of bridge the gap from higher end DAC amps that a lot of people use in this $200 price range, but also add some gaming features that a lot of people like because you want a microphone input, maybe basic tone control like bass and treble. So they wanted to have an all-in-one device that didn't really sacrifice on the performance side of audio. The K7 is made entirely from a CNC aluminum chassis. It is quite robust, it has a lot of weight to it, and it actually gets a little bit warm when it's used as well, kind of tying into the whole more high-performance output stage that it has built inside. One thing that sets it apart from some of the competitors is that it has a balanced output, which is not normally something you see on a product that's designed for gaming, which of course this has a dual microphone and headphone output. Now with some gaming DACs, the 3.5mm also serves as a combo jack, so if you use a headset that has a single cable for the microphone and the audio, which is known as TRRS, you can use that same 3.5mm on the DAC and it will handle everything, or you can use a breakout cable that takes the TRRS adapter or plug and turns it into a dual 3.5mm, one for the headphone, one for the audio. The Fosi K7 comes with that cable in the box, so if your headset didn't come with it, you still will have what you need. Because the K7 does not use a combo port, it does break out the microphone and headphone no matter what. Now the K7 has an AKM 4493 SEQ DAC, which is awesome. I love AKM DACs, and it's not going to be an exception here. I'm pretty happy with the sound, but I'm getting ahead of myself. And it also has a Qualcomm chip inside because this little antenna is for Bluetooth, which serves as a Bluetooth input. It uses Bluetooth 5.0, but it does have aptX, aptX HD, and aptX low latency in addition to SBC and AAC codecs. So if you want to use this as a Bluetooth bridge from your phone to the DAC, you can use that as well. It will not merge Bluetooth with your primary audio such as USB or optical, but you can use this as a nice high quality amplifier for mobile devices and take advantage of some pretty awesome codecs. Now another thing that makes this good for gaming is this has a UAC toggle button to toggle from UAC 1 and 2. UAC 1 is used for consoles, so if you have a Nintendo Switch or a PlayStation, enabling UAC 1 allows you to use something as powerful as this on your PS5 or Nintendo Switch. The only downside I want to say on this is when you use UAC 1, it limits your bit rate and bit depth and sample rate to 24-bit 48 kilohertz. Not a big deal, still more than enough overhead, but if you toggle UAC 2.0, that opens up to 32-bit 384 kilohertz sample rate, which is pretty absurd. The only downside to doing this is if you use UAC 2.0, you will not be able to use the microphone input. It disables it and it won't show up on Windows. This isn't just a console thing. UAC 2.0 is just considered for output only at the highest possible fidelity. Enabling UAC 2 I found also to cause a little bit of a delay. So if you pause something and then hit play, there's always like a 1-second delay, almost like a buffer stage before you actually hear anything. There's no actual audible delay in terms of being out of sync, so we're not talking like, you know, audio lag, if you will, but there's almost like a very aggressive sleep-wake function. If you are concerned with that, you do a lot of play pause with mixed content, maybe you're using this with video editing like I do, I pretty much had to leave it in UAC 1 mode because I needed that instant latency or lack of delay or pause in my audio. Now the K7 is a very powerful DAC, and with that comes a powerful power supply. This is a 12 volt 2 amp power supply, so there's a dedicated barrel connector on the back. This is not USB bus powered, so just keep in mind it will require an outlet for it to perform or at least work. Then you have a USB-C input. It's a single USB-C, and that's going to allow you to connect it to your PC or a console of choice. Optical input and coaxial input. So even though this isn't designed for something like an Xbox, if you connect the optical connection to your TV, you can still play all of the TV audio through the Fosi K7. And because of that, if you are playing on Xbox, that means you can get game audio. Obviously, the microphone won't work because we're not using USB-C, but if you only care about the audio output, you can still use the K7 for that. Quick warning, whenever you're using a digital connection on a stereo device like this, is it's going to force you and require PCM. So if you're using an optical output from your television, make sure you're setting it to PCM stereo mode. Otherwise, if you run into bitstream formatted audio, or you're listening to Atmos content on Netflix, for example, if you didn't set your optical output correctly, well, this will not work. So just keep that in mind. Now you have the antenna here, which is removable. It does not come with the antenna mounted on the box. I simply attached it for testing purposes. And with that, if you're not planning on using this as a Bluetooth DAC, you can leave the antenna disconnected if you want an even cleaner look on your desk. This has an RCA pre-out, not 3.5, which I love, so you can connect this to active speakers, whether you have Genelex or if you have Edifier, Kanto speakers, Fosi Audio makes some powered speakers now. So if you connect this to an active speaker and you press the output button, you can toggle between the headphone output that's on the front or the RCA on the back. And by doing that, the volume control on the K7 will adjust the output volume of your RCA, which is really nice to make it simple for using external speakers. I did try everything I could, and there's no way to enable both the headphone jack and the RCA output at the same time. You can only toggle one or the other. And if you do leave a headphone plugged into the front, you can still toggle the preamp output. It doesn't bypass or force you to switch or unplug your cable in order to use the RCA, which is nice. Now the K7 has a 1.5-inch LCD in the top center of the screen. As far as the chassis design goes and the way it places it, it's not always the most legible screen. I wish I had a little kickstand or some way to angle this more towards me, but it is very clear, and the off-axis viewing angle isn't bad either. When left alone, the screen will show you the sample rate and which connection is enabled. So if you have USB, you'll see that on the screen, and then on the left side, you'll see the sample rate. As you make changes, such as adjusting the volume, or if you use the tone control button, which again is going to give you some bass and treble control, you'll see those changes on the screen here. Now pressing in on the volume wheel adjusts your gain setting, and rotating it, of course, will adjust your volume. The volume steps are interesting. They go from 0 to 62, which kind of reminds me of the whole, 62 mile an hour conversion from 100 kilometers per hour. Maybe the European version goes to 100. In all seriousness, 62 steps is more than enough for volume control. It's just an odd limit to have. I would have expected like 50 or 100 like a lot of products out there, but it is what it is and it works fine. Just a weird finishing number. Now the right knob has a few functions as well. By default, it's going to just adjust what your last setting was. So you have a tone and mic button. If you remember what I said earlier, if you are in UAC 2 mode, the microphone button will not do anything. You can tap this and it's only going to toggle between bass and treble. If you are in UAC 1, pressing this will go through all three modes. So you'll see bass, you'll see treble, and then you will see microphone. And the microphone gain has steps from 0 to 10. Additionally, if you are using UAC 1, pressing in on this knob will mute the microphone as well. So this is doubling as not only the adjustment, but your mic mute button. So of course, with tone control like bass and treble, I wanted to measure and see what that actually translated to as far as an impact on your sound quality. And if you max this out, you go to plus 12 on bass, minus 12 for the minimum amount of bass. The translation of that in actual audio output is you get as much as 17 decibels of additional bass down to 20 hertz. It is a monster, and it does carry into the mid bass a bit, but the peak is lifted at 20 hertz. Conversely, if you reduce it, it drastically reduces sub bass all the way down about minus 17 decibels. The treble adjustment has a different impact on the sound characteristics. So maxed out adds about 6 decibels of treble, and if you go to the minimum, you get about minus 6 decibels of treble. So at least now that you know how it performs, you can kind of apply your own custom changes. Now, there is a tone bypass button. If you press this bypass button on the unit, it will disable your bass and treble adjustments that you had. So it's kind of nice to quickly toggle back and forth between neutral and whatever your custom setting is. I measured the frequency response of tone bypass on and off. The frequency response is basically identical. However, I do want to point out that from 6,000 hertz to 12,000 hertz, I got about half a decibel of roll off. It's super minimal. No one's really ever going to hear this, but it was an observable thing, so I wanted to share that. I already mentioned the output buttons toggling between your headphone out and your preamp output, and the input is pretty self-explanatory as well, going from your USB to Bluetooth, optical and coaxial, and then back to USB. So it just keeps repeating. And then the left button, of course, is your UAC control. Pressing and holding this will put the K7 to sleep, which is great. I know you expect some kind of power button, but you'll be surprised. Some amps and DACs don't make it easy to turn on and off. Some have a button on the back that physically shuts the unit down. Then you have something like the Creative G8, which has no power switch whatsoever, and it's always running. Simply tap that to wake it up, press and hold to shut it off. Now, focusing again on what makes this gaming is that it supports a microphone, which isn't just for gaming. Maybe you're using this for conference calls during the day. So I wanted to plug a variety of microphones in it because I'm learning that different microphones have different sensitivities, and the impedance and attenuation of the cables impact how microphone preamps work. So I made a recording of 6 different microphones tested on this, and I wanted you to take a listen and see how it sounds. This microphone is the V-Moda Mic Boom. And this is the Meze Audio Mic Boom. This is the Antlion Kimura microphone for IEMs. This is the VZR Model 1 microphone. This is the Epos H6 Pro microphone. And this is the Beyerdynamic MMX 330 Pro microphone. So I'm sure after hearing that demo, you notice a couple things. One is it's a very clean sounding preamp. There's no hiss or hum, which is to be expected and what I want. There's no coloration of the mic, so every single mic had its own sound characteristics, which is good because that means this microphone preamp is very neutral and clean. The only downside is it's very picky on microphones as far as sensitivity and gain goes. I sent an email to Fosi asking if they can do a firmware update later to boost microphone gain. Keep in mind, the more you boost gain on this, the more you have a chance of introducing hiss or a background noise. However, it was so quiet and the gain was low enough that I still want a little bit more overhead. One of the mics I like to use is the Meze Audio Boom mic, and it just wasn't loud enough without using a software trick like routing the audio from this into SteelSeries Sonar and then adding a compressor to make my microphone louder. So I asked that maybe the current level 10 gets routed to, level 8, and then at least give me a couple more steps beyond that to have some more flexibility. So just keep that in mind. Depending on which microphone you have, you might have to do a couple things to make it a little bit louder. As far as general sound quality goes, the Fosi K7 just sounds awesome, to be frank, with the headphone amp performance. Now, this uses an AKM DAC, and it's paired with a balanced topology inside, providing up to 2.1 watts per channel at 32 ohms. That is an insane level of power. It's far overkill for what most gaming headsets are, but naturally, with a bold claim like that, I had to test it. Now, thankfully, I built a headphone dummy load. This I have a dedicated video on, and with this switch inside, I have different very low tolerance resistors inside to simulate a 16 ohm, 32 ohm, 150 ohm, and 300 ohm load. I have a whole video on my testing methodology and why I did this, so if you want to learn more, I'll have a link in the description for that. But this is basically to help provide some transparency and validate what some of these output claims are from these manufacturers. And with all that being said, I am very happy to say that Fosi was not blowing smoke with these numbers. It measures exceptionally well. The output power of over 550 milliwatts per channel at 32 ohms in unbalanced mode is just insane, and it's well within the spec of what Fosi Audio is claiming. And I did validate over 2,000 milliwatts per channel at 32 ohms, as well as exceptional performance in higher impedance loads. So if you're using something like this to connect to a Sennheiser HD800S, or maybe you have the new Audio-Technica R70X or XA and you just feel like you need more power, but you want the flexibility that some of this has more than enough juice for the most demanding headphones out there. It even gets a little silly when you start comparing it to other gaming amp DACs out there. The Creative G8, which is loud enough for a lot of people, has about 50 milliwatts at 32 ohms. And if you have that already and you know how loud it gets, picture 11 times that power on the same impedance load with the same connection. That's pretty insane. Regardless of power claims, that's just wattage, but at the end of the day, it has to sound good, and I am very pleased to say that the K7 kills it in this regard as well. I'm really happy with the audio implementation because, again, aside from boosting the microphone, the output performance is just exceptional. It has a dead silent noise floor. I have no hiss. Even when I'm adjusting volume on higher, if I'm doing like analytical listening and I'm changing the volume, there's no digital step noise, there's no hum, there's nothing that happens from touching the chassis. And between the very clean, very neutral sound, I'm really pleased from an audio performance perspective. This is critical for both music and gaming. On the music side, if you're critically listening, you don't want a DAC that sounds like it's compressing or stunting or limiting some of the details that you're paying for on a highly resolving headphone, for example. Conversely, you don't want it to be too bright or analytical either. I've had some, like when I reviewed the Schiit Gunnr 2 and a couple other products like that, they have a brighter sound presentation, and it's not always the best pairing with more analytical headphones. And then you have something like the Burr Brown DAC from HiFi that's a little bit softer and smoother sounding, and at the same time, if you need more resolution, well, maybe that's not the best pairing. This particular one is not going to do anything to your sound to color it or drastically change it. It's sounding the way it should, being resolving, being neutral with plenty of power. I have no obvious signs of compression or weird voicing issues or anything like that. And thanks to this external and very robust power delivery, I have more than enough overhead for the stronger bass impacts that a more demanding headphone is going to require. As far as IEM performance goes, that power is obviously overkill, right? Well, I did mention the low gain, but the other thing I want to point out is because this has a digital volume adjustment, there's no analog potentiometer. And what happens in very easy to drive IEMs with a high gain on an analog potentiometer at the lowest possible setting that some people might use for IEMs, you tend to get a channel imbalance because the way potentiometers work, and as you increase the volume, it evens out and it no longer becomes an issue. With digital gain, that's never an issue, and because you have low gain on top of it, the volume steps are perfect even for IEMs. This has less than a 1 ohm output impedance, so it's not going to change the sound of an IEM either, allowing you to literally connect any audio product you have to this with a neutral, high-performing sound. On the note of the volume adjustment, these knobs are also metal. It feels exceptionally premium. There's no grind. They float just above the rotating mount in the center, and they're even removable, so you can swap these out with your own, which is kind of nice. But, I'm not sure you would. The only thing that would make me want to consider switching it is these are digital knobs, but there's like a dot to indicate a setting. These spin forever. That dot is basically cosmetic, and frankly, it's very misleading for me. I personally do not like that at all, because if it was an analog potentiometer and that's the minimum, and this is the max, well, great. But if you're on a digital one, you could be up here and it could be set to only +2 out of 62 volume steps, or you could be down here and you could be maxed. So it's kind of misleading. I would have preferred an all black knob personally, so maybe I'd switch it out for that. Otherwise, the build quality, feel, placement for larger hands even is fantastic. Now, I don't want to pretend that there aren't other gaming amp DACs on the market that are great as well. So I want to start with the Creative G8, which I've talked about a lot. This is a feature-rich amp DAC. It's not a powerhouse by any means. I already mentioned the wattage output difference. This is literally 11 times more powerful at the same impedance, which is crazy. But what I like about the G8 is it has a dedicated game to chat knob, something that the Fosi Audio K7 does not have. You have to do all your game to chat mix via software. So this is nice. It also has dual USBs on the back, so you can connect this to a PlayStation and your PC at the same time. Or if you do it through the HDMI ARC or optical and run the USB to your PlayStation, you actually get game to chat mix on PlayStation 2, which is kind of a unique feature. It also has optical ins and outs, line in and out, and all of this can be merged into your output for your headphone or IEM. This too has a sub 1 ohm output impedance, so it works well with the IEMs. I already mentioned the combo jack being a good benefit, but it does still have the breakout for the microphone and headphones separately. The big kicker with the Creative is it requires you to install their software to use all the features, and it has a ton of extra features like 10-band graphic EQ with presets, so you can go through 10 different settings. It has a compressor for footsteps. It has virtual surround effects and all these other bells and whistles to really customize your sound. If you're not going to use any of that, it does still have a good microphone preamp. It sounds really clean as well, especially if you're in the direct mode where you're not doing any audio processing. The big downside with this guy is it's just not quite loud, and I have had some bugs with the software lately where USB 2, the second DAC has just no audio whatsoever. I've actually had to do a few firmware updates and factory resets to get USB 2 to work, and I had it working for a while, which is great. And then it recently stopped working again. It's always right before I'm about to drop in a game and talk to my friends, and I'm fumbling trying to fix it very quickly. So I do like the Creative G8. It has its own place because it packs in so many features for the price, being less than the K7 at the time of filming this. It's just sacrificing in a couple of areas such as overall output performance and reliability. And then you have the Schiit Gunnr, which is a little bit more expensive, at least from what I expect, but it has a couple unique properties to it as well. So this has no balanced amp. It's a single-ended only, which is no problem. Balance doesn't guarantee better sound. It literally just means that some amps can get louder based off design. This has 1.5 watts times 2 at 32 ohms in unbalanced mode versus 550 milliwatts. So this is basically about 3 times as powerful in unbalanced mode. Great sound quality. I was really happy. This uses an ESS DAC, very neutral, really good implementation. On the back real quick, you have your USB jack on the back. This automatically toggles between UAC 1 and 2, just like the Creative. You can switch modes on that. So this will still work with PlayStation as well. Has an optical input, and it has the analog preamp output on the back, so you just disconnect your headphone and you can use this as a preamp. And then of course an external power supply, which gives you a lot more power. This does work on USB only, but it's a lot less powerful in that regard. On the note of the general design in the front, you can tell this is all metal and it feels really good. This is a nice improvement over the knob feel I had on the Hell 2. 1/4 inch output, which is the only one here doing that. Dedicated microphone input. No microphone gain adjustment on the device. You have to adjust it via Windows or your PS5, for example. You have 3 gain settings. You have a negative gain, neutral, and a high gain. And basically, this is what you'll need to use for your IEM because of that whole analog potentiometer. This is digital. This one's analog, so if you're in high gain on an IEM, you might have channel mismatch at low volumes. What makes this guy unique is it has 2 knobs never seen on a gaming amp DAC before. One is the presence knob, which boosts upper mids and low treble, kind of like the footstep area, and it's not going to be perfect, but it's a really quick way to boost some key areas for EQ. And this one is the width knob, which is basically crossfeed. It kind of blends some of the sound from the left channel to the right to kind of break the barrier that is your head between both audio sources. Because when you listen to things in real life without wearing a headphone, if you cover one ear, your left ear is still hearing some of the stuff to the right. And the idea of crossfeed is to kind of simulate some of that effect. This is a very aggressive change. So if you max it out, it may make soundstage sound super wide and trippy. Very hard to localize things for footsteps. So, you know, mildness is key here. Don't go too aggressive, and it can still be a fun listen. So here's the thing. At the end of the day, I really love what the K7 is doing because it's different. It's not trying to be a Creative G8. It's not trying to be a Schiit Gunnr. There are different feature sets with all 3 of these, and that's why I'm really excited for this particular product, because there's no direct comparison in the market right now at this price. All 3 of these represent some of the best implementations with different goals in mind, and they do a great job with that. And I'm really happy that Fosi has released something like this, because I think for a lot of people, this is exactly what a lot of listeners are going for. Having some of the features of things like you get on the Creative, but with the power output closer rivaling the Schiit Gunnr, which is awesome. If it had game to chat mix, it would have been like a super home run. And if they do have a firmware update that boosts the microphone volume a little bit, well, I won't really have anything left to kind of complain or nitpick about. So really happy with this. I think the only gotcha in its current state is if you have a microphone that's not too sensitive and you were buying an amp DAC specifically to boost an analog microphone, well, you know, just keep in mind you might be limited to how much volume you can get out of that. Otherwise, it's an awesome product. Thank you so much for watching this review and making it to the end. I hope you found it helpful and learned more about this product today. Again, I will have links in the description below and a coupon code to save you money. So don't forget to love it, like and subscribe. You can love too. That's always cool. I'd love to see you at the next video. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.